Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our sexy vampire retrospective with the 1974 film Vampyres with a Y. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing series from HarperCollins. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire, and co-creator of Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hi, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. The funny thing is I'm waving my arms and I actually pointed at the window as though you were just right outside the window.
I hope Tony's not right outside your window.
How do you know I'm done?
That'd be really creepy and weird.
Just floating like the kid in Salem's Lot. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, where you might be finding this show, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Good evening.
Good evening. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from the one and only attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Hola. I should have said of Guzman Immigration. That's how we're introducing you now. Guzman Immigration. Anyway, okay, according to Wikipedia, Vampyres with a Y. This is a hard title to say such that people can imagine the spelling, but Vampyres with a Y is a 1974 British erotic/lesbian vampire horror film directed by Jose Ramon Larraz. The film stars Marianne Morris and Anulka as female vampires inhabiting a derelict country estate where they seduce and kill passersby until into their lives come a man that one of the vampires finds impossible to kill, and a young couple who are determined to discover their secret. It was filmed on location in England, mostly around Oakley Court and Windsor, so which is a location that you will recognize from many other films, many of which we have actually talked about on the show. So I'm excited to get into this one. Last week, you guys asked me to kick it off, which is traditionally not my position in the opening thoughts, but you wanted me to because you wanted me to.
Well, of all things, we're going to have to put you in some other kind of position with this sexy retrospective.
Yes. The question is, do you want me to?
I'm shaking my head right now, by the way. You can't see me, but I'm shaking my head.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
disapproving. Disapproving
all right.
head shaking happening.
Julia, would you like to be the first to give her opening thoughts on Vampyres? I think this one is an easier one for you guys to just walk right into. It doesn't need quite the contextualization that Lips of Blood by Jean Rollin required. So, that was the most cynical laugh I've ever heard.
none of these requires any kind of like big time setup. I mean, they're just a bunch of naked vampires.
You're right. That is a key. That is a key element to this retrospective. But okay, tell us about this week's Naked Vampires. Let's go, Julia. We'll go Julia, Drew, Tony, and then I'll go. Julia, lay it on us. I know everything sounds like a "that's what she said" joke. It's true.
Oh my God, I've been saying that's what she said so much lately. It's not even. It's really bad.
I can attest to that.
So let's see. I kind of like this movie. There's some things about it that really bugged me. The ending really bugged me a lot because it was not what I expected. I had a much better ending in my head that would have worked better. But I think that I like the set. I like the way that it looks. I like the bisexual vampire leads. That there's these two women who are lovers, but they go in every day. I'm kind of wondering how it is that and people haven't just decided not to even go down that road, because every day they get unsuspecting male drivers to pick them up and take them to the Oakley Court, which is a place that Jason and I have actually stayed. And there they proceed to eventually drain them of all their blood and then put them back in a car and make it look like some weird accident that drained them of all their blood, even though there's no blood around. But somehow that hasn't made the papers or whatever. Some people just haven't really noticed. But there's this weird couple that decides to camp out there. I shouldn't say it's weird because I guess the whole point is that she's painting Oakley Court. That's why she wants to be there. But anyway, they have this camper and they're kind of hanging out and watching people come and go and strange things happen. So that's kind of the setup. And yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm glad we watched it. But I will have some things to say, especially when we talk about the end.
Excellent. Okay. Who do we say next? Drew, I don't know if you've seen this movie before, but tell me your opening thoughts on Vampyres.
I have never seen this movie before, so I was a Vampires of the Y virgin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I enjoyed this movie more than I did Lips of Blood, even though I will give Lips of Blood a little bump up. I think Lips of Blood is technically probably a better movie than this, but this is an enjoyable wannabe Hammer movie. You know, like it didn't quite have the Hammer production values or acting or anything that makes Hammer great, but that's kind of what they were going for, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I found this movie enjoyably campy. Like, I love how it was so chock full of it was enjoyably cliche, because it was like, here's the credits and there's all these bats and we're gonna have a capsule and there's gonna be a ton of thunder sound effects, and of course the vampires are running around a cemetery in cloaks, and it made me laugh. I think about the only thing I would say that and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, that made it stand out for me from other movies of this time period of this type, though, is how savage the vampire attacks were. It almost reminded me more of like an 80s horror film where there was just gallons and gallons of blood, which is not something I really associate with particularly vampire movies of this time period, but really, not, like I think of, 80s movies really being the start of that sort of hyper-violent splatterpunk horror. I mean, I just did Herschel Gordon Lewis before this, but
yes,
the vampire attacks in this are quite arresting, and I mean that in the best way possible. But yeah, overall, I'd say an enjoyable wannabe Hammer flick. I thought this movie was fun.
Outstanding. Tony, where do you come down?
I like this. I had seen it before. I think, man, we may have even seen this at Weird Wednesday. Perhaps, but I can't remember.
You and I saw this, Tony, you and I saw this actually at one of the very first Harry Knowles Butnumathon festivals.
That's where the Colorado years kind of blend together now.
Yeah.
In a good way, but yeah. I like this movie. I had seen it before because I was watching on Amazon. I can't remember if it's part of Amazon or if it's part of Shudder. But yeah, I really dig it. There's gothy women with cloaks. In a lot of ways, I know that we talked a lot about the director of Lips of Blood and his style, but I gotta say, for me, gothy women, I like a little bit to the imagination.
Sure.
So I think these vampires in some ways are sexier than the fully nude running around vampires of the previous film. That's my own thing. But yeah, although it does bear, maybe why I say Weird Wednesday is, again, it has some of the least, for an erotic, quote unquote erotic film, it has some of the least erotic making out.
Oh my God, yes. You were so right. I was laughing my ass off at those.
Like when they're, when they're getting down to business, okay? Or they're, in hot gothy outfits, cool. When they start making out,
when they're just sort of mugging,
it's kind of like, oh no, why would you?
I know, exactly. I had the same thought. I was like, have these people never kissed a person before?
Right.
I know it's supposed to be savage and animalistic, but instead it just looks like, oh no, don't. That's not a. Oh.
Yeah, they both kiss. They kiss as though they are rattlesnakes unhinging their jaws and trying to swallow one another. They just
But
sort of
not
go,
even that. It's just all just like all none of it. Like, please, oh please, I hope this is not like some impressionable teenager's first. Like, well, I guess that's how we do it, and you would go to prom, and well, why would you do that? I just tried what was on this vampire movie I saw. That's
like,
no, none of that.
you
Just
got
don't.
my entire mouth in your mouth. What in the world?
I figured you'd do the same. It's the thing I saw. Now, my older brother told me now I had to do something about your belly button. I don't know any of this. Like, oh goodness. Like, man,
my
it's
God.
bad. But like, I really do like its earnest. I think Drew put it best. Kind of wannabe Hammer
Yeah.
thing. And I think there's a lot of awesome stuff. No, I think the reason that, I guess maybe we could get into it, but the I think they pick people who go down. Drew's right about that road. It's just like, hey,
Yeah.
look, I guess men just disappear down this road.
Oh, that
But
was Julia's observation. Yeah,
yeah,
she
sorry.
was like,
Yeah.
why? Apparently.
I think it's just that, like, I think they pick people who are just traveling through the countryside. How they pick them, I'm not sure. Although you'd think the cops would be like, man, that's weird. Who ends up naked in their car?
Yeah.
With just blood everywhere. I guess
If-
what a weird wreck. What a strange accident.
All the victims that the vampires choose are driving nice-ish cars and wearing like sport coats or nicer. So they're picking kind of, wealthy or semi-wealthy people, professionals.
Who apparently can afford to take 3 or 4 days off and not.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Idle.
look at that car. That guy doesn't have to do anything.
Idle
Also,
people, yeah.
also,
Yeah.
the people they pick, you're kind of like, I don't think the world's gonna miss this guy. You're just do your vampire thing with the wine guy. That guy, he probably
Yeah.
just fired half his workers, and I don't know. That guy is so
Oh God,
douchey.
that wine guy.
Like, oh man,
This is like
I'm with the vampires on that guy. Anyway,
that guy is a master douche before the word even exists. I mean,
Well, and it
it's
was like
it's like
that's the stupidest scene too, because she's like, "Oh, that's not even the best wine that we have. I'll show you another one." And then she just kind of walks around, and he just finds one. Is it like glowing? Did it have like a special aura around it where it was like,
No.
"I am the most wonderful wine"? Because she never pointed it out or anything.
No, he is telling her that. That's the whole point. He's like, I know wine. I'm going to show you the best. It was
but
probably the worst.
She says, "Oh, that's not even the best one we have. We have a better one." But then she doesn't ever point it out. He just finds it magically.
maybe on the way between the two scenes you saw. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter because he's just that much of a douche. He's going to pick the one and insist, oh, look, baby, honey, I'm a guy and I know wine in a way that you don't. So this is actually the best. Even if it was just the worst, like had turned to vinegar, that dude is going to claim that it's the best.
God, what an ass. Okay, anyway, we've all hated it. We've jumped well ahead. Okay.
Yeah, but that's okay.
So my opening thought, I only want to address this thing. Well, actually, two things. First, yes, this is the second film in this second Sexy Vampire Retrospective, because we do have one before, and I need to put together a list of all the movies so far in our ever-increasing Sexy Vampire Retrospective. But I chose this one because it's well known as a 1970s, what people call an erotic vampire film. But mainly, I actually really do think that as we all have, I've seen a lot of Hammer movies. I'm a big proponent of Hammer movies, and I think this actually beats several Hammer films that I've seen. This does a good job a lot of times. It's just very different. To me, they're not quite trying to be Hammer. I think it's trying to be a sort of modern Gothic. It's gonna kind of deliberately, brazenly call back to all these images of gothic horror with the cloaks and everything. It's still very modern. I think it's its own thing. And
But Hammer did that too, and so did Count Yorga, which we did,
yes,
you know,
it
a
is
while
much
back.
more like Count Yorga. It is for
But
sure.
Hammer did
Yeah.
the Dracula in the '70s movies as well.
Yeah, like
So
Dracula AD 1972.
yeah,
Sure.
so I still feel like it's completely fair to plus the fact that they use Oakley Court, I still think it's completely fair to call this movie a 1B Hammer.
It's it is funny to me. It's like seeing an alternate universe. I'm just saying that, and I know this is weird. As the Hammer proponent, as like a huge Hammer fan, I'm just saying that I don't think this movie is trying particularly to be Hammer-like. I think it's its own whack thing. I will say this: when Tony and I first saw this movie, at probably like 4 o'clock in the morning, during the original Button-Omathon. I don't remember keeping track of the plot at all. I think I was so tired after, like, at that point, like 12 hours of watching movies that I had just completely lost my ability to track a film, and so because this time I watched it, it seemed to make a lot of sense, except for a couple things we're going to talk about right now. So, okay, let's get into it. In this film, this movie opens with two scenes that we really never reference ever again, and we're left to kind of puzzle together. Do they matter? Do they not? What does it all mean? So, bearing in mind that we can talk about spoilers and talk about the whole thing, let's get straight into the complicated stuff. First of all, this movie opens up with something just like the Amityville Horror, where somebody we have a couple of ladies who are having sex. They're upstairs, and then this guy with a gun comes up, just like an Amityville Horror, in the rain, and he shoots them dead. That's the beginning, and we know.
And so that's clearly these two women.
Yes.
Because at the end there's the reference to it. But the question is, why the hell did they become vampires?
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, sometimes murder victims in folklore did become vampires.
Yeah. That's a common myth. You just didn't see it in the movies very much, and it's not even mentioned ever again after this. But and by the way, this is before.
No, it's mentioned at the end. It's mentioned at the end. The guy at the end is like, "Oh, these two women were killed here." People are all like freaked out about it.
But what I mean is you have to have sat through the whole film by that time. When you're at the beginning, it's just like, okay, they got shot and now they're vampires, basically, which is fine. I'm just saying that is kind of a surprise. That's unusual. But they don't show us the identity of the killer. So hold that in your mind. Next, we get to a scene where the guy who is going to end up falling in love with one of the vampires, and the character's name is Ted, which is not that impressive a name. But anyway, Ted, who is like real swanky, drives a nice car, wears nice suits, man of leisure, whatever the hell he is, he goes to a hotel. We see him check in at the hotel, and he is acting shady. Okay? The guy behind the hotel is like, behind the counter is like, hey, haven't you been here before? And he goes, no, I've never been here before. Oh, I must be mistaken. There's something freaky weird happening about him. He goes to his room, he hears footsteps in the hall, he's being paranoid. This is before he gets to the vampire house. So, what the hell is going on with these first two scenes? Because these are two setup scenes.
The first one, I think, is like we said, but the second, that one that you just mentioned, makes no sense. Like, it doesn't ever become anything. It's just kind of, I think it's maybe a plot that they threw out.
I kind of wondered, was it supposed to be that he is the one that shot the two girls at the beginning years earlier? And if
that would be my thought.
Yeah, but if so, why wouldn't he recognize the one girl? And why did he shoot them in the first place?
Yeah, let's think about that as a plot.
It also puts the rest of the movie in a weird context because he's sort of portrayed as the victim of the evil being perpetrated throughout most of this movie, and you feel kind of bad for him. But then if he's a murderer, doesn't he kind of deserve it? So it'd
be so weird if they could pass a spell that made him forget.
Well, does he have a gun? What makes you think he's the murderer? I didn't get that at all.
I just think
Because
that
they
these two
said at the
scenes-
very end of the movie that the murderer always returns to the scene of his crime.
Oh,
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he is. That's just what I got out of it. And, like, because my first thing before it was revealed that he was a vampire, I actually thought that he was going to end up being one of the vampires in the movie. And that's why the guy thought that he had seen him before. But, that didn't end up being the case.
because that thing of I've seen you before, surely, that's definitely a thing that is also done in Daughters of Darkness, which is another film that we've done in our first Sexy Vampire Retrospective. That's 1971. This is 1974. It's very likely that scene is influencing this scene. But it doesn't go anywhere. It leads me to think maybe it was just an early draft scene that was left in so that the film is long enough.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie where it doesn't go anywhere, because there's also the whole business of the young couple that's camping, and the one girl is painting the castle, and the two vampires come across her, and she says, "Oh, I always knew we would find each other," and draws the little symbol on her hand.
That's what I mean when I say that
finger.
the end of the movie pisses me off, because to me, the end of the movie should have been something with that. It should have had something to do with that, and it didn't.
Well, but it might.
The couple in the camper ultimately are kind of meaningless characters because they
but I disagree about that because Harriet's the young couple who are in the camper. And by the way, it's very common, like in the Hammer movies, for there to be a young couple, and ultimately the husband is a doofus and is tossed over, and the wife, who is quite demure at first, becomes ultimately a kind of a she becomes wanton and expressive because after her exposure to the vampires. So I'm thinking that's where this is going to go, and the way the movie ends, I still think it could go there. It's just that I think they're going to turn her into a vampire. We just don't see it, which by the way is maybe that is a little dissatisfying. Because all we're left with, it depends. You have to assume that. Otherwise, all you have is that this is a spoiler. She gets her throat cut, and that's the end of that character.
We haven't
which
heard
is
from Tony
funny.
in a while.
No,
Are you still there?
Yeah. I'm agreeing with my silence. Like.
Okay. So anyway, bear those two scenes in mind, because that's the movie just sort of rolling down the track, and before it takes off, because the plot begins in earnest very soon thereafter, and you have two running plots. Well, ultimately three, but you have the young couple, John and Harriet, literally the dullest couple, and let's talk about all their scenes together, because they are this young. I guess they're on vacation, but instead of going like to a resort or to the seaside, they've got a camper and they've hauled it into the woods, and they're just gonna hang out there and I guess fish for like a week. This is what they're gonna do, and this is like
She's gonna paint. She's gonna paint.
and
Oakley.
he's fishing, right?
Yeah.
Right. They've parked right next to a derelict house, which is actually Oakley Court, which we'll talk about in a sec. But I thought it was really Julia. Actually, I'm not making this up. She said while we're watching this, after like the third scene where these two get up and just kind of kick back with their coffee and their Sultana brand, she goes, she's like, I really want to buy a camper. It
does. It looks so fun. It looks like it's just like so fun to just kind of have your own little mobile hotel room wherever you want it.
What's weird about these scenes is they almost become like this Greek chorus where they're like, I wonder what's going on over there. And they keep like kind of coming back. They don't actually really interact until close to the end, they're constantly like these voyeurs, and they're also the narration. It just reminded me how they kind of revamped that in maybe Rubber about the killer tire, where there's people like, look, here's this thing that's going on.
They become fascinated by them because they first spot the two vampires just hanging out by the road. Before we know how the vampires operate,
Well,
and the young couple rolls by and they're like, "Hey, there they are." Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but then it's like this huge thing that one of them's behind the tree, and they spend like 5 minutes with. Well, I don't know. I think you just made up that second one because apparently that's inconceivable that there would be another one. And it's like, she's like, no, really, there was somebody else.
That is that dude's MO, though. He is like the ultimate contrarian. Like no matter what, like it's like, oh, you just imagined it. Oh, that sort of thing doesn't happen. That's all in your head. Oh, there was no hand there. Oh, that guy could have just fallen over on some glass. Oh, like he's just He's no matter what she says, he immediately disagrees with her. Yeah.
Can I just mention that Harriet? I love all of Harriet's fashions. Love them. There's one thing that she wears where she has like a brown corduroy skirt and like a tan sweater and then a brown little hat and boots, and the whole ensemble is like something like straight out of like Cosmo circa 1974. It is perfect. She has a lot of these outfits.
You can tell Jason is secure in his masculinity because he uses the word ensemble and doesn't even think twice about it.
This is why I watch these things, actually, is for the female fashions of the 60s and 70s. That's just sort of my weird ass obsession. But I mean, she has a lot of these outfits. So, like the Howells on Gilligan's Island, she has brought a hell of a lot of clothing to spend a week in the woods, in her caravan. I gotta say, I always imagined, if this were a more porny movie, why isn't there would have been this affair between her and the two ladies, and eventually they would toss the husband over the side, just like in Daughters of the Darkness. But that doesn't happen here, and I think that's a structural missed opportunity. But okay, now let's get into our serial killer vampires. We got two vampires. We got Fran and Miriam.
Okay, I stop right there. Fran is the worst name for a vampire in the history of vampire cinema. How did that get past the editing stage? Every time they said the name, I was like, really? Fran? The dread vampire Fran? I cannot believe that is the name they went with.
Yes.
So true.
No, I agree, especially considering she's supposedly the exotic one, the one where he's like, "Where are you from?" And she's English, but she's the exotic one, and yes, her name is Fran. But I mean, they've got dorky names. His name is Ted. It's Ted and Fran, who do not sound like a victim and a vampire.
Key party maybe, vampire couple not so much.
Oh, darling, we've got to go see Ted and Fran. They asked us to come over.
Do we have to? That's usually that's usually the conversation you picture.
So Fran and Miriam is actually a very vampire-y kind of name. I think that's perfectly lovely. We very quickly figure out what their modus operandi is. Before we talk about Ted, we see they are into this thing where they stop men, they take them, they drink with them, they date them. I mean, they don't just kill them instantly. They date these men, and then have sex with them and then kill them. And it's very, I mean, to me that's pretty mythic. I mean, it's like they're very interesting monsters in that's what they want to do. I mean, this is the one thing that it's most like, and Drew, see if you agree with me on this, it's like The Hunger. Do you remember in the beginning of The Hunger when David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve, they'll pick out people at the club and then take them back?
It does sort of feel a bit Hunger-esque. And they're also, even though it's a vampire movie, they also do operate a lot like serial killers. I mean, they don't even have fangs. They use They use a dagger most of the time, or they just chomp down on somebody like a zombie.
Just tear into somebody's flesh.
Film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they it's funny because this movie is so cliche in so many ways, but they completely forgoed having fangs. I don't know if it's just because they maybe couldn't afford having fangs made or something, but that was interesting to me.
If it's a budget choice, it turns out to be an inspired one, because it's very interesting that they drink blood and they are mystical. They have powers, people's watches stop around them, and yet they they don't have fangs, and they're gonna cut you again, just like the Hunger. And it's one of those things where just like in the Hunger, they have these monstrous needs that they have developed whole rituals, just like with serial killers, how they're going to act out these needs. And when they exercise them, it's a brief moment to give in to all of that ecstasy, but they've built this whole sort of ritual around the way that they're going to be behaving. So it's not just the consumption of nutrition, it's also this whole sexual thing and this whole sensual thing and whatever. And after they grab these guys, then they dump the bodies the next day. So anyway, Mystery Man from the hotel, who maybe was a mystery man, maybe he had his own plot, maybe he was here to figure out what was going on with Drax down at the next castle. He's instead, think about this. It could be James Bond. Anyway, we see the date. He comes back with Fran, and this is one where Miriam is hiding out. So it's just, we get to see their whole date. Through the eyes of this guy, we get to see how it actually goes down with one of these vampires, because she's like, "Oh, drive me to my castle." It's Oakley Court. Oakley Court looking much more overgrown than it is today, and that a lot of that might be set dressing, but they go inside. They go, there's fire, and they're going to be making out, and it's only much later. I don't even think we see him get cut that night. It's when he wakes up in the morning and he realizes that he feels weak and he's been cut.
Cut and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, cut and like you say, he's starting to get weakened. Okay, so that happens like a night or two, but then he makes a stupid mistake, which is that he goes back. He finds the body of this guy.
Yep.
And he goes back for more. And I'm
what
are you doing? Don't you know?
The first time he gets cut, he goes to the young couple and he goes, "Hey, young couple in a random caravan, could you patch up my arm?" And they're like, "Yeah, rock on." And they patch up his arm. And he goes, "Okay, thanks." And he goes straight back to the castle.
Right, but he also sees like the dead dude, and he still goes straight back to the castle.
Well, I think A could be in thrall, and then again, he could be thinking not with his brain.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think
it's a little bit of column A, column B.
Yeah, I think he's mystically enthralled. He's probably some kind of wacko vampire poisoned, but he's also just sexually addicted to this girl. And so he's going to go back until he's dead. He's acting like an addict himself. And now, okay, there's this other amazing scene. Well, yeah, okay, I apologize. You can bring up addiction.
No, it's okay. You beat me to it.
Okay, somebody riff for me on this, because I thought this was really fascinating. The second night is when Fran comes back with her friend Miriam. He goes, "I've been waiting for you all day," like she's a dealer. And she goes, "Oh, well, I went to town, but here I am, and here's my girlfriend Miriam, and she picked up this guy." And no part of either of these guys, as they go up and drink wine and listen to records, no part of either of these guys are like, "Isn't it kind of weird that these two girls just picked out two completely random guys, and we're in their castle alone?" There's all of this is only
they're
good.
in a porn movie at this point. They're in their own little personal porn porn
Right.
movie, and that's
That's
not how
right.
it works in porn. In porn movies, pizza delivery guys do not seem surprised when the woman that they're delivering the pizza to comes on to them.
Right. Right. So that's that whole scene happens. Okay, but check this out. Middle of the night. Somebody explain this to me. Middle of the night, before it gets really violent, Fran gets up, she goes out into the hall, and Miriam is just frozen. She's literally frozen in the
And that was
moonlight.
so weird.
What is going on with
I
that?
think it's that she basically OD'd on
Yeah.
ecstasy / blood / whatever gets
Yeah.
vampires off. That's the take I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But then she goes and has more.
Yeah, but at that
Well,
point they're together,
they're
so
playing
she's
it
got a
kinda
second
fast and
wind.
loose with, But
Yeah.
I kind of got that because she kind of was like the reaction is, oh man, you overdid it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
wake up.
that was how I took it, but
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'll buy that because I was thinking my solution wasn't as good as yours. I was thinking that maybe it was something about the moonlight or the brightness of the light out there, but that wouldn't make any sense.
Weird.
Yours is better. She had been
It was a weird,
drinking, she'd
weird
kind of
shot.
gotten out of control. It made her sleepy. Because these vampires conk out. They do. Like after
And they conk out with their eyes open, which is super creepy.
So it's I mean this is some creative stuff. I know that Hammer was doing creative things. Horst Jansen in Kronos, there's fascinating alternative vampires in there. But these guys are interesting. They have their weird sexual frenzy. They conk out, they OD, they
Well, they also have to. They don't burn in the sun. They just have to be away from sunlight before
right.
the last church bell rings, which I
Yeah.
thought was a neat, very
Right.
very folklore-y touch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some smart folklorish kind of stuff. The director is Spanish. It's very possible that he's lifting from ghoulish European folklore a little bit, and is less beholden to a set of ideas that would have come up from Universal and then Hammer Pictures. You know what else is kind of strange to me here? You're exactly right, Drew. You've had the modern Dracula films like Dracula AD 1972 and
So the Satanic Rites of Dracula.
Satanic Rites of Dracula. I'm sorry. But this is 1974. So what's really going on is The Exorcist. I mean, this movie is happening as the Gothic era is literally just hurtling off the tracks and going to disappear for many years. It is a very, very strange creature right at the end of an era. And I do think for that reason it kind of stands alone. Anyway, when she wakes up, her friend who has sort of conked out, OD'd as Tony put it, in the hallway, they go back in to finish off this other guy, the one who's not our friend Ted, and yeah, they go completely batshit on him. They're biting him all over. He's screaming. They're sort of clutching at his flesh. We don't see. This isn't Cry of the Lorelei. We don't see actual torn flesh, but there's a heck of a lot of blood all over the place, and they just sort of they smear it.
That really surprised me how violent these vampire attacks were, because usually, I mean, even in modern vampire movies, usually you see some fangs sink into, a neck or somewhere, and there's some blood from that, but like, I don't know, like other than like, I guess maybe the second Blade movie or From Dusk Till Dawn, or, like I can't really think of well, I mean, I guess Near Dark, but I can't really think of too many vampire movies that are just like, okay, that's a lot of blood. Like they really weren't fooling around with that.
It's pretty great. I mean, it's pretty. It is pretty cool, frenzied, and animalistic. So they're getting the blood all over themselves. They're smearing it on their mouths. It's I think it's an exhilarating image, especially in comparison to what you've come to know from Hammer. By the way, I get it. We did do Lust for a Vampire, and that involved a lot of blood too. But yeah, what you're thinking of, Tony, it really won't happen until like Lost Boys. Remember when they were like ripping heads off? And I think also Near Dark has a heck of a lot of like straight up gore. Um, so yes. Uh, so it's after they tear that guy apart. Ted wakes up. Now it's his second night. He is even weaker. Um, he goes for a drive. I guess he's
I'm
gonna
actually
leave.
wondering.
And yeah.
I'm actually wondering what a TED Talk by this particular Ted would look like.
Not very healthy, because he
Yeah.
looks pretty sickly by the end of this movie.
I gotta
Oh my
tell you
God.
guys, if you see two gothy women, don't stop. That's the TED Talk. The
Right.
TED Talk on
It would be a 12-step. It would be an addiction talk, because it'd be about
vampire
how
addiction.
I hit
Yeah,
rock bottom because I could not get away from these two women. Yep.
But I mean, TED Talks always have to have repetition, so it'd be like, so what do we do? What do we do when we see the two women in the cloaks with the hair and the one is hiding behind the trees? You know, do we drive on? No, we don't, do we? We stop.
No,
We
we
stop. I
get
see
cut.
you.
Yeah, we get cut in the arm, and we just kind of just keep coming back. That's what we do.
Oh man, yeah. So he makes it as far as the place where the police are loading the dead guy, and he just doesn't drive any farther. It's like he's truly enthralled. He turns around, he goes straight back to the castle. And meanwhile, John and Harriet, again with the hilariously bland names, are watching all of this like Gladys from Bewitched. They're just sort of looking out the window, and actually John isn't. He's doing his own thing. He's like fishing and whittling and whatever the hell he's doing. And she's like, "Those women are walking across the field again." And he's like, "Would you leave the poor women alone?" I love how he's constantly just going, "Would you stop with your obsession with these women?" It's unseemly. So she finally, around the time that they're gonna eat the wine connoisseur, and they've got Ted captured. He's too weak to get out. The vampires are having an ongoing debate that sometimes involves lesbian shower sex about whether to let the guy go or keep him around. And the one vampire is like, "You're playing a dangerous game. You have to let him go." And all of this amidst this crazy shower sex scene involving wicker furniture and no shower curtains. I don't know what's up with this shower that doesn't have shower curtains. But about the
Truth will get in
time.
your way. We'll just say.
I told you, Jason,
I guess
that's how they do in Europe. When I was in Paris, that we didn't have a shower curtain on the shower that my host family had either. It just is what they do.
that's just really funny, because then you've got like the water gets on the tile, and then you've got to deal with
Or they figured out how to not get water. I don't know.
maybe that's the answer. Is they're just better at this stuff than
Yeah, they're better
Americans.
at showering. Or they don't shower as often, so the water just doesn't. It's not a problem.
Or they're partial to baths. Who knows?
Yeah.
Our European listeners can go. Jason and Julia, you guys are completely deluded. We do too have shower curtains, and the reason there's no shower curtains in this movie is it's easier to shoot a lesbian shower scene from across the room if there are no shower curtains.
Ding.
So yes, ding.
So who wants to push past the shower curtains when you can just have what was going on?
So Harriet. By the way, this is the point where these movies look a lot like my favorite 1970s fetish, the Emmanuel pictures, which are basically which are movies that taught me that for sex to be truly satisfying, there has to be a lot of wicker furniture around. Those movies were an expression of sex to an entire generation of American youth. Anyway, Harriet is snooping around, and she has 2 snooping episodes. One, she goes down into the basement and finds the sleeping vampires and freaking corpses. I mean, like desiccated, grody, yucky corpses in the basement, which I think she doesn't see the corpses, and she hustles back out. The second time, the second time she's peering in, and I think that's the time when her husband catches her. And I might be running this together, but anyway, we have a series of episodes where Harriet is snooping around the castle and manages to get away with it. And then there is the curious episode that Drew mentioned, where the vampires, who are constantly walking back and forth between the castle and the road because they got to pick up more hitchhikers, or I mean more drivers, they stop Harriet and they mark her forehead. It is a truly crazy
was so
scene.
weird.
And we don't. Yeah.
You know, the scene it's a really good scene, but it doesn't add anything. Like I like Julia. Yeah, I was disappointed.
Right. Because she says, you know, we finally found each other. I will know you by this sign, or you will know me by the sign, whatever it is. And then it's like there was a scene that they took out. Because to me, that should have been the setup for some kind of like almost Wiccan or even satanic ritual of some kind, where the 3 of them do something different and new. You know,
well, like at the end of The Witch. You know, like at the end of The Witch or the end of Daughters of Darkness,
right. Exactly.
where they're going to dump the family, because that's what happens coming up. You know, is they end up, you know, because Ted's story doesn't really resolve. He's still wiped out. They show up outside the camper like Count Yorga, and they eat the husband. They just, they, you know, he's John.
Well, again, that
they attack
scene
him
could be a scene in a zombie movie. Like that scene of their attack on him, like that has more in common with a George Romero zombie movie than it does most vampire movies.
It is very frightening. He's screaming, he's kicking. There's something particularly scary about somebody kicking a windshield, and you know, they're tearing in his clothing. There's blood everywhere, and shortly thereafter, they grab Harriet, and you know, she runs out to see that he's dead in the car. They grab Harriet and drag her back to the castle, and it's very ritualistic, and that's why I think that maybe there's a scene that we didn't get to see that was cut out, or maybe we're just supposed to imagine this is where the story goes. I don't know, but they strip her down, they make her kneel, and they cut her throat. But I think it's completely plausible that they intend to make her another vampire. And I'm not being some vampire geek to say so. I think that that's the only thing I can assume from everything that they've shown us so far.
Well,
but it should have gone. It should have gone the way of Skin and Max, and it should have been a sensual experience for her. Like you were saying. I mean, it should not have been this violent rape. It should have been like, okay, we're going to seduce you, because she's already intrigued by them. She's fascinated by them.
Yeah.
She's been painting their house. So it wouldn't have been a far stretch for them to just go, come be part of our world, and use their charm like they did for the guys on her. I don't know why they chose to do it this way. It was really strange.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you?
That's interesting.
Is anybody aware that there was a remake of this that came out last year? Like it looked very, 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 very low budget. But I almost want to watch it to see if they pick up on any of this stuff that we're talking about.
I don't know.
Like if they,
I'm really. I read that they reused a lot of the original dialogue, but I have no idea if it is terrible or great or. I mean, the
watched
reviews
the trailer last night. It didn't look great, but I just almost want to see it just to compare and contrast.
No, I'm interested. I'm not against playing it just to see how it goes. Yeah, I have to say this very assaultive scene where they grab Harriet is just really disturbing. I mean, because she's you know, really screaming. She's very fearful. It is like something out of a serial killer movie, and she seems to be dead. And the movie wraps up because the vampires run for their hiding place, and then we get to the morning where we find Ted in the car in front of the house. And that could mean a lot of things, since we don't see any vampires after that, because a real estate agent's showing the house. So, is Ted, was all of this a dream? And Ted is, these are options. All of this is a dream, and Ted has just been drinking in front of this house. Ted is still enthralled to the vampires, and tonight he'll go back into the castle, and he managed to make it out into his car, and that's it. Um, I don't know what else there is, but Ted is the murderer. This is not my theory. This is one from a website called Taliesin, that Ted is the original murderer, and he is doomed to do this over and over and over again. He can't really keep from coming back to this castle and being the thrall to these vampires who were his original victims. I don't know. And that might be reading too much into it, but it's a really interesting.
That's actually what I took out of the ending of the movie.
Is that so?
Like,
okay.
Yeah, like that was my read on it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if he's a murderer, he's like a professional murderer. I mean, he's a contract killer. He would have to be, because he doesn't seem like the type who would go around. Because he doesn't seem like a serial killer himself. I guess he could be. But the idea of like just going into a house and shooting a couple lesbians, because
I just don't
what?
See it.
Because
I mean, it doesn't feel like fit to me, because he never does anything even remotely like stalkerish or violent. He never seems.
Yeah,
to be,
but I.
Well, I mean, if he was a hitman,
there's no other explanation for the opening scene. Like, I'm not saying it could just be it could just be the amateurishness of the screenplay coming through. Like that, I think that, I mean, I really do feel like that was probably their intention.
Yeah.
Tony was saying something.
Oh, I said, I mean, if he's a hitman, he wouldn't have to be stalkery or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
he could have been a hitman.
No. He would know that these were the two women he killed, because he would know.
Well, but if he's cursed,
a curse can do anything.
Doing this over and over and over again, he probably doesn't have a choice. It would explain why he is so drawn to them, even though it's frankly stupid for him to keep going back inside this castle over and over. Like, a rational person would not do that. So, like I said, I think that was their intention. I think that there is, this is a B, frankly C grade movie, and I think there was some roughness around the edges, which isn't really, a criticism of it. Actually, I found that very charming about it. But it's okay to point out that a lot about this storyline just doesn't really come together.
Yeah, well, I just get the impression that there's something missing. That there's like a who that somehow were written and never shot, or shot but not included in the film, or any number of things. That because you and I, we all can feel it. We can feel that the resolution is there somewhere. Now, look, with actual movies, what a lot of times happens, I don't know anything about the actual production here. Maybe they ran out. Maybe the studio or the bondsman or the investors came in and said, "You're done. Whatever you've got, we're gonna stitch it together and release it." I don't know. So whatever you're going to take out of this movie, you have to do it just forgiving the fact that major plot thread just simply doesn't.
Oh, and
resolve.
I do. Fact, like I am much more forgiving on this movie than I am Lips of Blood, but that's all because honestly, I'm giving Lips of Blood a little bit more credit because there seemed to be some sort of artistic through line with that, whereas this seems to be more like just a pulpy kind of monster movie.
I'm feeling better about this movie than I have been in the past. I actually came out of it this time feeling like there was something, and this can go ahead and be my final thought. I really felt like this was a pretty beautiful film this time. I loved how real it felt. I loved the sort of location feel for doing a vampire movie, even though the Hammer films were shot at Oakley. Several of them, Brides of Dracula and so forth, this felt like a real house, which it is, of course, but the rain felt like real rain. I don't know if it was or not. It felt it had that same sort of grungy feel that we liked about Count Yorga. And at this, just like with Count Yorga, it was grunginess and hippies. There's no hippies here, but and meanwhile the vampires are kicking back and wearing capes and so forth. I loved all that stuff. So for
Well,
me,
I mean, they wear
this was
capes
a
because
very
that's what
interesting.
vampires are supposed to wear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of cool, and daring, where there's all these people. It reminds me of the argument over the Superman trunks, where people are like, "Oh, Superman shouldn't wear trunks. Trunks are stupid. If Superman were real, he wouldn't wear trunks." And I'm like, this is the dumbest conversation I've ever heard. If Superman were real, he would probably rule the planet. I mean, I don't know what it's. I don't know where to end that sentence. You start with if Superman were real. What a ridiculous premise to discuss like whether or not somebody should wear red underwear. But yeah, and it's similar. People go, I don't think vampires should wear capes. Like, why the hell not? They're magical beings. They can wear, whatever they want.
Dude, if I get away
Anyway,
with wearing a cape,
that's
I would wear a cape.
yeah,
Like, I
man, you
mean,
could totally rock a cape. I have that belief.
why wouldn't you?
I do.
And
Yeah,
if you're a kid, you put a towel on. That's a cape. You're set.
yeah.
It's awesome.
These women look good in their capes.
Yeah,
They
they do.
look very good in those capes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like their outfits a lot. I thought they looked awesome.
Yeah,
I was
they're
not being
like I
I was
said,
not being critical with my interjection there. I love the fact that the vampires wear capes. I
Oh
think
no, I
that
didn't think
is
you were.
amazing.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you were being critical at all. But yeah, that's the other thing is because I'm such a fetishist for the 70s, this movie is delightful. I love everything that everybody wears in here. Even the terrible stuff. So all right, that's my final thought, and I jumped ahead of you guys. That's fine, because sometimes I'm a jerk that way, and I'm sorry. Let's just go back to Joya. Tell us anything that we might have missed about the film. What are your final thoughts on vampires?
Well, it's funny to mix the gothic with and the gowns and the capes and everything with the cheesy ass 70s clothing, that occasionally pops up, or
Yeah.
70s styles. I think that's always really funny because it kind of pulls. It's a little jarring, when you see. I can't remember what it was there was some outfit that I commented on, and I was like, oh, that's just a really, really bad outfit. And then I think I don't know. I think I said everything I really wanted to say. It's it's an attractive film, but it's got its problems. I do like that the women are the vampires. It's kind of fun as opposed to having some guy that's going to be the one telling them what
Yeah.
to do and controlling them. Yeah. So I don't know. It was.
Well, they
I'm glad
certainly
we did
do have agency. I mean, to that point, they have all the agency here. They are driving the plot. They're making all the decisions. They're deciding
Yep.
whether to keep somebody or not keep somebody. To that extent, it becomes a feminist vampire movie, which I think the director would be delighted to hear. So okay, Tony. No, I'm sorry. Drew's next. Drew, feminist vampire movie.
Actually, it is. Well, no, you're right. It is me. Yeah, I like this movie. I don't know that I would ascribe any of the high-mindedness to it that I think the rest of y'all are. I just think this is a pulpy B movie, and I think that's totally okay. I
Yeah.
like this in the same way I like the some of the 70s Hammer movies and Count Yorga and those kind of films. I think this is an enjoyable addition to that. I wish that some of the plot lines would come together better. I'm kind of with Julia on that. Like, I think that they dropped the ball in terms of that, and maybe there were some unshot scenes or some scenes that ended up on the editing room floor that could have maybe brought that together better. But I did like this movie a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I probably will end up watching it again at some point. I I dug it.
Thank you. And I was shocked I hadn't watched it in all these years. Actually, I was really, really surprised since Tony, you and I saw it many years ago, and in watching it now, it was shocking to me that we hadn't seen it again. Tony, what are your final thoughts?
I like the film. I think, like I said, I'll watch a lot of films with gothy chicks being vampires
Sure.
in it. I think, you know, that will draw me to a movie. I'll be honest, completely. I
Yeah.
think their vampires are really interesting. I think that the savagery that they have, and the fact that they seem to really they're completely evil too. That's what's
Yeah.
really interesting, is they have no qualms about dispatching people and using people and, intimidating um, people in the caravan, like all of that. But also they seem to genuinely, want to stay together, just as a vampire couple who happens to is what we do. And I think I think everybody else is. I agree with. I wish some of the plot stuff came together, and I hate the ending of, was it a dream? I don't know. That's
Yeah.
an ending that I'm personally tired of, even though maybe there weren't as many of those, at the time. But I don't know. That thing quit working for me after a while. Because
Hmm.
in retrospect, I always think, well, great. So I watched this thing. There were no stakes, really. If there were no stakes of any kind of this, now that I think back, for a vampire
There's
movie.
the
No,
for Ted, I suppose,
no,
but it means that Ted is our only stake,
I'm
But
in
yeah, yeah.
AKES. I'm just being
Oh,
stupid.
sorry.
No, I'm
Duh.
being dumb
Okay.
and punny
No,
and
I'm just
just
being slow. You're fine.
no.
I
It's for my own amusement. Sorry, everyone. But no, I like the movie. It's not one I would watch, all the time, but I think it's really cool. I think it is, definitely gets it NC-17. It warrants that, which it says on when you watch it on Amazon. But yeah, it's a good B movie. Definitely of a time, and I like where it goes with its pseudo hammerness. Definitely, again, not for everyone. I think it's, some people may prefer some of the moves a little faster, but I don't know. I dig it.
One thing I wanted to add when you were talking there was yeah, you were talking about the sort of the rating, the nudity involved, and I was thinking about the fact that when I interviewed Hadley Freeman, who wrote this book called Life Moves Pretty Fast, and it was about how all the movies of the '80s, were as we remember them. And one aspect of them was that the movies of the '80s were much more sexual than movies of today. And the reason why was that although violence has continued apace, today's studios actually have tapped the brakes on nudity. So you see a lot less skin and a lot less people making out, unless it's a comedy and the nudity is being played like for laughs, and that says just all kinds of things about the maturity of the audience that are kind of unfortunate. But it's just sort of interesting that in the middle of the century we had this whole, you could have an evening entertainment and it was going to have violence and it was going to have magic and it was going to have nudity, and all of those things were just part of the art. Again, I know, to Drew's point, that sounds probably more deep than it should be, but it's a trend that's definitely real. One more thing, Joya. Oakley Court, doesn't it, I wasn't it cool to to actually look at this place and go, I've been in that place. We've had drinks in right down there in that lobby. The place looks closed in this movie. I mean, that might be set dressing, okay? But the place looks like it is literally closed. If you go there today, and I totally recommend you go there just to get hot chocolate if you're not going to do anything else.
Yeah, it's a neat place.
If you go there today, It is beautiful. The grounds are well kept. It's it's
On the
got giant
river, it's on
tennis
the
courts
Thames.
and stuff like that.
Well, you
It's
should
right on the
probably mention
Thames.
that aside from this movie and several Hammer movies, this was also the castle in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And Rocky Horror
Yeah.
Picture Show. That's right. Which is yet another episode of the Castle of Horror. We did that. We did that movie. We could probably do a list of all the movies we've done that have taken place somehow or another in Oakley Court. We still haven't done Brides of Dracula. Do you realize that? That blows my mind. Anyway,
We should,
yes.
thinking about all the suggestions and everything. I think at some point we should have like a master list pin that says everything.
Yeah.
That way when people post and they go, "Hey, have you done this?" It's just right there on the Facebook page. And not that
Yeah, I
we
guess
don't
you're
want
right.
to take suggestions. It's just,
But if you're
like
looking
it, you
for-
might, if you're like, "Oh man, I wish they'd done this," and it's there, you can just go to the thing.
That's an easy list to put together because I can just copy it straight off iTunes.
There you go.
Because the iTunes page just lists all the episodes, all of them, all the way back to Van Helsing. And there are currently, I'm not making this up, including the interviews, there are 253 episodes, which means in another like 30 episodes or so, we're going to come up on our 250th movie review, if you can believe that. I mean, that...
Thanks, everybody, by the way. Just indulging our craziness. Much appreciated.
I don't know what kind of celebration, what kind of party we were going to have around our 250th episode. It just sounds so fun.
It involves vampires. That's all I got.
All right. It definitely involves vampires. Maybe Brides of Dracula should be number 250, honestly, since it's such a great movie. Okay. Let's get our endorsements. I'm just curious what you guys have to share with us. So let's go Joya, Drew, Tony, and then I'll go. Joya, do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
Oh gosh, I've really enjoyed La La Land. What a neat film. It's a lot of fun. We had just been watching Singing in the Rain because as part of our Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher homage weekend, we watched that, and then we go and see La La Land, and it's very similar. It's just a neat little classic musical, and Ryan Gosling plays all the piano himself, even though he just learned like in the last few months before he filmed, apparently, but he's amazing. It's just a neat picture, and I liked it a lot, so I recommend it.
Fabulous. Drew, what about you? Endorsements.
Hello?
Yeah, you're here.
You lose me for a second?
Maybe.
I do have an endorsement.
Yep.
I just got a bunch of stuff for Christmas as we are in January, and one of the things that my charming wife, who indulges my obsessions probably more than she should, but it is appreciated nonetheless, is Tobin's Spirit Guide, which is the off-reference book on ghosts and supernatural beings in the Ghostbusters franchise. Well, with the new movie over the summer, as a tie-in, they actually they made one.
Cool.
And it's written it's written by apparently Dr. Stantz and Dr. Spangler with help by Eric Burnham, who does all the wonderful Ghostbuster comics for IDW, with illustrations by Kyle Hotz. And aside from just having they go through a lot of the more famous creatures from the movies and cartoons. The illustrations are wonderful. Like they're very creepy. In fact, I'm looking at the page right now with Slimer on it, and I don't think I would ever think that Slimer could be scary, but this illustration nicely accomplishes that. As everybody who follows this podcast knows, Ghostbusters is one of my major obsessions, and I've been able to indulge that very in a very large way this year. But I'm giving this a thumbs up, and don't take that lightly. Apparently, it is kind of hard to find, so I'm sort of amazed that my wife was able to get this for me. But yeah, this is a really fun book, and if you're a Ghostbusters fan, even casually, I think you'll find it enjoyable.
Outstanding. That's fabulous. Tony, do you have any endorsements for us?
Yeah, I've been because of the podcast had to look for a bunch more stuff, and it worked out to be a really nice savings to just re-up my Shudder account, and I've been really enjoying it. Also, I noticed Tales from the Dark Side is on Shudder now, as well as some other movies are coming through that will be exclusive to Shudder, some of which I need to actually review that I saw at Fantastic Fest. So yeah, lots of good stuff there. And also totally separately, because of my background as a 3D animator, I finally got a chance to see Moana. It's beautiful. Really great story, really awesome. The chief, the girl who's the chief in it, or chief to be.
This is like,
super
I know
great.
this is very old, but it's like, is it a silent
No,
film
it's
or
brand new Disney movie.
No, the animated one, Jason, Moana.
Oh,
the one that girls
Moana.
talk-
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you said Buana,
No,
like
no,
Buana Devil. I'm sorry.
no.
All right.
Yeah,
Totally
Jason,
different.
we haven't watched
That
it,
was-
but our daughters did.
Oh man, it was great. It's a beautiful movie,
I'm
and
sorry.
I think it's probably my favorite. And they make it a point to. There's a kind of funny thing about it, whether or not she's like an actual Disney princess, but I think she's probably my favorite of all of them. Like I said, I mean, I had to go. This was the last weekend to see it around here, I believe. But yeah, it was really great. Totally, like I said, totally different than any of the films we're watching. Almost
No, but-
diametrically opposite of these films, but beautiful film. If you were on the fence about going to see it and it's still around, I highly recommend it. The songs are great. Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords does a song, and I'm a big Flight of the Conchords fan, so that was really cool too. But yeah,
most of the music is by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Doing a lot of
really,
it.
really solid.
It's so funny.
Flowing, like it's really good. So,
well, that is a better choice than Buana Devil, which is a 1952 movie with Robert Stack.
Also, Jason,
yours is
I have to say, for Christmas, I also got the Devilman collection, which is the 70s.
Oh yeah,
/80s Devilman series from Go Nagai. And let me tell you, the OVAs that we've seen are nothing like this. It is bizarre. It's awesome, but man, is it weird, and in all the best ways. So I also recommend. Thanks for Discotheque Media for just taking old anime series and going
That's
with it.
great.
They're kind of the savior of, if it's an older series, it doesn't usually do that well for whatever reason. People want, there's a lot of, despite the fact anime getting more and more views, and luckily there's Crunchyroll, and actually Amazon just launched Anime Strike, but I'm curious how that's going to go because it's an extra $5 in addition to your Prime account. But like the fact that Discotheque is taking all these old series and just going, hey, okay, here it is, Devilman, and I never got to see it before. Wow, is it weird? And Jason, I think you should get the discs because.
No, I agree. I
know you have the 70s Devilman action figure, the one he's like, looks like he's in green tights. Looks more like a superhero.
Yeah.
He looks less devilish. He doesn't have like the goat kind of legs with the.
That's right. To me, he looks very, very superheroish. So this is interesting. Yeah.
You got to see it. It's man, it's weird, but it's really.
We should post some. This is your action item, Tony. Find a good brief snippet on YouTube to post on the site so people can know what what you're talking about as far as the craziness of Devilman, because it is
I wish
pretty
they'd
crazy.
done the OVAs as well, but that already, you can find those more readily. Finding the whole series of classic Devilman and all its strange glory is, if it wasn't for Discotheque, we wouldn't have it. So
Cool.
Thanks to them for cool stuff like that.
My endorsement is actually the place where I spent Saturday. I went, oh God, I love skiing, and so I went up to Copper Mountain, which is just one of the ski resorts around here. I just drove in from Denver, and it was so fantastic. It's a place that I first went to like I swear to God, like 20 years ago, and they're a later ski resort. They opened in the 70s, but there's, even with a very busy mountain, I just went up to the top of the mountain and used one of the small lifts and just kept running laps up and down the higher areas of Copper Mountain. So if you're in Colorado and you want to get some skiing done, I definitely recommend it. It was a blast, and I always love Colorado. The other funny thing about skiing up here is that you always kind of hear, it's like they haven't moved music forward in the past 30 years. So like once you get up to the mountain, you're always like going by some warming hut where they're serving coffee or something, and they're still playing like Leonard Skinner and Bob Seger. It's kind of strange. I think that's awesome. I love that stuff, but it's just weird that basically you get up high and everybody's like sort of, they haven't moved. Styx is like the most recent thing that anybody has a copy of. So that was cool. Okay. So that is our second sexy vampire picture. We are still talking about what comes next, but all of these are going to be groovy and grungy and sexy and might come forward to the 80s. We just haven't decided yet like what we're going to do. We are totally listening to all the proposals. We just haven't completely figured out what all is going to go here. But if you were enjoying yeah, go ahead, Drew.
I mean, we could just keep this thing going until we're tired of it.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say this could be a superset. This could be
there's been a lot of suggestions.
Yes, I think we should definitely get to some of these. I think people are going to literally hunt us down and kill us if we don't eventually do Near Dark.
They're not literally going to hunt us down and kill us.
Please
no.
That would be horrible.
Jason's always putting these ideas in people's head. I'm a little concerned.
And then he has to go and add literally, like, that's just no.
Well, I was just so you know, I was using literally ironically.
I think Jason, in his heart of hearts, wants to be a cult leader.
I think it's more just in a horror movie.
I would rather be in another horror movie other than Straw Dogs. Thank you very much.
Wouldn't that be
I don't want to be in The Shining with Jason, because that would mean that he's the, the.
Oh, that's true. A working no play would make Jason a bad boy.
I just think it's so sweet that you're thinking that I don't know, somehow I'm flattered that you're thinking of me in The Shining. I guess I'm not.
What the freaking hell? What?
I'm just saying.
You realize that he goes crazy and tries to kill his family,
all the misbehavior.
Right?
I totally.
You're flattered by that? No.
No, that part.
Stop. No, stop talking.
Post podcast is going to be an interesting night. I think this Monday at the.
Both of us are glad that we are not in Jason's shoes. That we can. When we're off the podcast, we're just done. This is going to keep going for Jason and Julia.
Julia always understands what I mean. So.
Although, it didn't sound like it, but okay. No, I was thinking though.
I mean, that could be. Maybe that's why he married her. I mean, it stands for reason.
I was thinking the other day that I do wish that, not to be too full of ourselves, but I kind of was wishing that I had time, or that somebody else had time to make fake posters for all this really stupid movies that we've come up with.
Oh yeah, you're right.
As we've been doing this.
What was
Like-
it? Fire shark? What fire shark?
Lava
Is that the one?
shark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lava shark.
the shark that burns. But there's
I think there was also a fire shark. I think fire shark was its own thing.
Yes.
yeah. There's been more than a few, and I kind of wish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe the people in the Berenstain Shazam alternate universe have those posters.
Right.
But I was just like I said, I was driving around. I was like, oh man, I wish I had time.
Those
to make
posters
these really
exist
stupid
in
posters.
the alternate reality where we're on NPR.
Oh, nice.
Well,
Anyway,
okay. So it will be a superset. We just don't know all the movies yet, but it's going to be some cool stuff. We're also, to Tony's point, going to post a list of all the movies we've done so far, so that we can just point to it all the time. And so I'll figure out where I can put it on the page so that you can find it at any time. And this is a really fun retrospective. We want to hear on the page what you're thinking, how you like the tenor of how we're going so far. We will totally engage with you. So we think it's a blast. And what else? Bring in your friends. We're still early in this retrospective, so this is a good chance to join, listen to the last few episodes. So as I always tell you guys,
people have been wanting us to do vampire movies again for literally years.
I know.
Now.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, because there's so much horror out there that we will literally go a year and a half or two without ever talking about vampires. So, and we've been talking about this movie for nearly 2 hours, and I feel like we barely even touched on, the things we could touch on with. But we got more vampires that we can touch. So, everyone, be back next week. We are so thankful. Play this for your friends. Force them to listen. We approve of that. We want more listeners.
Cult leader.
Send us reviews.
Drink
And
Kool-Aid.
we'll see you on the page. Good night, everybody.
good night.
Night.
Night.